Hey everyone, welcome back to Conversations in Courage.
Welcome back.
Okay, so today we are tackling the topic of manifestation. Don't hang up the phone. do not do not hit stop on the podcast. You've trusted us for this long. We're 5 years deep together. So, we're going to talk about this. We're not going to spend all day on it, but we have some things that we need to say and hopefully you find it interesting.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Mark, why are we talking about this now?
Like, why not? Like the timing is just perfect, right? On the one side, we're entering into the end of the year,
Mhm.
segueing into the new year where everyone loves to think about intention and, what the year ahead means for them. Just this last month, 11/11 occurred, which, many people would say that's like a prime day for
True.
intention setting and manifestation. And then, I also just feel like you and I have been on this journey for a while, right? This intersection between, manifestation on the one end of the spectrum and,
Mhm.
just, conditioning the mind and neuroplasticity on the other end in the spectrum. And, one of the things that I guess became really clear for me recently is, I love reading, multiple books, and I was revisiting some books I had previously read. And one is by James Doty, who is a neuroscientist from, um, a neurosurgeon actually, from
He's
Stanford.
both. He's
Yeah.
both.
One is Todd Rose, who's a social scientist from Harvard, I believe. And then one is Wayne Dyer, right? So we have a neurosurgeon, a social scientist, and effectively a spiritual teacher. And if you really just unpack what they're saying and look at the essence versus the how, right? It's all
Mhm.
the same stuff, really, right? And it led me to this conclusion that if we really think about things, very often, most adults are not necessarily living the life that they choose, right? They're really living the life that they're or we're conditioned to see, based on our own internal narrative and what society expects from us. So that was the backdrop of all of this. And then, as you and I really started to get to talking, what we realized is there's some real outcomes and some actions and some you know um, intentions that can be set to that all of us can use in our daily lives, right? Whether we're talking about how you create a better corporate culture or how you create just a better life for yourself or your community. So that's really kind of the why for me.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm so interested as someone who is lucky enough to get to build her life from scratch in a way. I mean, I think we all are, but I'm very, very conscious of that because, I don't work in a traditional capacity.
Right.
And so, on one hand, I am this stay-at-home mom, and on the other hand, there's all of these other things that I do and all of the fitness that I get to do and all the creative work that I get to do and I do get to build it.
Yeah.
And it is this for me is courage because it's terrifying. It's terrifying to not know uh sort of like how much money you'll make month to month. It's terrifying to know that if I get injured or really sick, a portion of my income is gone as a fitness instructor, right? If
Right.
I don't
Right.
work,
Right.
I don't get paid, right? I only have disability insurance because we pay for it as something extra, right? These
Right.
these jobs, they
Right.
don't give you
Right.
insurance, vacation time, all this stuff. And so for me, where I find I am most challenged, and this is where intention really comes into play, is in the letting go of those societal expectations, those limiting beliefs from me, from my upbringing, um, you know, trying to figure out like what my real voice is
Right.
and trying to get to the root cause of what's really holding me back. And it's like this spiral, this labyrinth, because like the more I know, the less I know, the more I know, the less I know. And I just like keep uncovering these parts of myself. And I think, and you can, because you've kind of been studying this more than I have, from at least from a scientific perspective, I think that the more I'm able to set intentions, the sort of less labyrinthy it feels and a little more like my autonomy and um, free will
Yeah.
meets up with the things that are outside of my control. Does that
Yes.
make sense?
It does. It
And so
makes perfect sense.
it requires courage on my end because I have to stay with it, right? I'm playing the long game here.
That's exactly right. It makes total sense, right? I mean, I think that is the epiphany for me as well, right? If we think about, we'll talk about Todd Rose just really briefly, right? He wrote this book called Collective Illusions, and
Mhm.
how our reality becomes conditioned by those around us, right? What society
Yes.
thinks, what we brought up, our own beliefs, our own life lived experiences, that type of thing, and that holds us back. But the other thing that we know is where you place your attention or intention, depending on how you want to think about it,
Fair.
right, influences what you see, right? What you hear, what you believe, right? And the more you can do that, the more you start to rewire what is actually possible, right? And that isn't just, you know, positive thinking or rose colored viewpoints, right? That's actually brain science, right? That's where neuroplasticity comes in. uh
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
No, go ahead,
Yeah,
go.
no, I was just
I'm
gonna
with you.
I was gonna just bring it back to your original point. It's the words that you chose were really specific, right? Like kind of your own internal work that you're doing. And I
Mhm.
think that's the real big takeaway, right? When you can kind of sit with yourself and really understand and ask yourself those questions around, why do I believe this? Why do I behave this way? Like what does good for me look like? What does great for me look like? What does success for me look like? Not influenced by other people's filters, but by your own filters, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
um, there's a great quote which basically is, do we categorize what we see, or do we see what we categorize, right?
Ooh, interesting.
And I think that is really the essence of this.
Mhm. Mhm.
We, throughout our lives, people define categories for us, and that's the filter that we view life through. I think you can flip the script and go in. You can completely change the narrative and change the outcomes as a result.
And so hopefully, people who are listening can see that we're not talking about how do I sit down and meditate so that, Santa brings me a Rolex for Christmas,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's not manifestation as a means to get more stuff. It's not about material wealth. Like I think it is about abundance, but if we and we will link these books in the show notes because if you're interested in this, it's really important to get curious around these perspectives outside of the sort of like spiritual pseudoscience, how this has been hijacked, right? To just say like if you wish for something and if you put it on your vision board and if you'll get it. But what James Doty has given us through his story of manifestation, uh, is that it's more connected to your heart and compassion and he doesn't even say purpose, but it's just like more soul oriented. So it is abundance, but it's not necessarily material abundance. Um, and sometimes like that can be the byproduct, but solely manifesting for material abundance, this suggests is missing the point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the super interesting thing, and Dodie, I think, does the best job, connecting the dots and all of this. On the to your point, putting things up on a vision board, right, writing in your journal, having these personal mantras, it
Which
isn't
I
going to
do,
just, which is a great
right?
practice, right? I
They make
think
me feel
more
good.
more people need to do, but that in and of itself doesn't just make
Yes.
magic happen, right? What that is
Yes.
doing is it is conditioning your brain to start to see patterns. You start to see yourself differently, right? If you
Yes.
start
Yeah.
to talk about yourself with enough specifics, even if it is connected to material things about where you're going to live or, the type of work you're going to do, like whatever it is, if you can be
Right.
very, very, very specific in as many forms as possible, then again what you're doing is your attention is changing, and that
Yes.
opens the aperture. And I think, one of the this is maybe a stupid example, but I'm going to use it,
Oh
because I
dear.
think it'll prove a point, right? when back when I was in college, my favorite car was this little Honda CRX. It was a two-seater little pocket rocket. It was the, manual transmission. I loved that car.
Mhm.
And when I got the car, before that happened, I didn't see any on the road at all. But after I got the car, like out of nowhere, I just see them everywhere. And clearly they were always there. But because my lens shifted, I
Yeah.
now started to see what's possible. And I think that is what we're talking about, right? We're looking
Right.
to reframe our lens in terms of how we see ourselves. It's about identity, right? And identity and authorship is what will ultimately inform outcomes, right? If you just chase an outcome and you don't pay attention to the rest of the stuff, that is where it falls apart.
Right. Right. And I think what I love about this and just like where I sort of geek out is that this also pulls in the work of Charles Duhigg and James Clear when they talk about habits,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm thinking specifically about um you just said identity, and so something that sticks with me of how James Clear frames it in Atomic Habits is kind of like um your like your habits are a vote for the person you want to become, right?
Yep.
So every
Yep.
time you do that thing, you're casting a vote for who you want to be.
Yep.
And then similarly, he talks about um how that shift in identity, how you see yourself, something as simple as um he uses an example of smoking, and that sticks with me obviously since I used to be a smoker. And just saying the difference between saying no thank you, I'm trying to quit, and no, I'm not a smoker. Those are two different identity sets,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so or the same thing is like, I'm not a drinker. I don't drink. I don't, right? It's showing who you are, which influences what you do, which influences where you put your attention, which influences where you bring action, which influences who's in your circle, which influences ultimately how your environment then gets shaped, which then influences who you are. It's like this crazy feedback loop that you could totally be unaware of it and live a perfectly fine, normal life. Or you could cultivate that awareness and you could just see where it goes. And I'm
Yeah.
so excited about this because I'm just like, wow, maybe one day I'll actually fucking do it. Or
Well, you
be able
are,
to
like,
do
you
it
are, let's be
consistently.
real, like, let's be
But I'm
real, like, you are
scared,
you
let's be
right,
real. I get
right,
scared,
right,
and then I, like, pull myself back, and then I go, and then I pull myself back, but I know it works, right?
right.
Because it has. It's worked for me, it's worked for you. We've seen it in each other, we've seen it in other people. But, I think that because we're so conditioned to see manifestation as, "How do I get more shit? How do I get the shit that I want?" We forget that we actually have the power to architect more than we think we do.
Amen. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
100%, right? And that's why I love this whole idea, which is like this is really about it's really about authorship. And what you just said, I'm gonna bring it back to Todd Rose and this whole idea of why he chose this word of collective illusions.
Mhm.
We strip ourselves of our own our own writing in the script of our lives by just following what everyone else does. And to your point, you can live a fine life, right? Based on the success of what life looks like through everyone else's lens. And if those things happen to be aligned, then great. But one thing he talks about is where things go awry is when when how you behave out in the world is different than what you believe internally, right? There's a breakage of
Yes.
integrity, right? And when that
Yes.
breakage of integrity occurs, now you don't show up well. Your energy doesn't show up well. You're anxious, like you're not as confident. And all of that spirals. And then if we connect the dot one step further and we believe that how we show up and the energy that we have and the presence that we have influences those around us, now you can start to connect wider dots. If you're in a corporate space and you happen to be in a role of leadership or maybe just a role of influence, and you walk into a room and you're not confident and you're trying to kind of lean into what the environment is there versus your authentic self, people read that immediately, right? They don't necessarily lean into what you're saying. They either think you're a fraud or they think that you're not sure about where you're going. But if you walk into a room and you know who you are, you may not agree with everything, but you know who you are and you're confident, right, about what you think and what you're saying, then that immediately shines, right? Like energy begets energy.
Every time you say something, everyone's like, "Yeah, but what about?" It's like, shut the F up. Look at me using less curse words.
Wow, I'm so proud of you.
I very much believe in the expression in the authentic expression of language, however that looks for me. And I don't want to yell F bombs in people's ears from now until eternity. Um,
Well, plus we have a 4-year-old that is really tuned into language these days. There's that fueling things
oh
as well.
yeah. Oh yeah. It is hilarious. Where was I going?
Damn it. I don't know. We were
Oh,
talking about collective
no,
illusions
be
again.
be the naysayers.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
need to take a moment to speak to the people who are like, "Yeah, but blah, blah, blah." Okay. Now, Mark is not saying that workspaces are easy. Mark is not saying that there aren't compromises that take place, especially in corporate places. There are like lots of politics and gendered things, and like there's just lots of bias and discrimination and white supremacy, and there are a lot of things that take place in corporate culture. And Mark knows this because he's been doing corporate culture probably as long as I've been alive. However, I think especially when we are leaders or people of influence in these spaces, there are tactical and nuanced ways to voice your integrity, your sort of like core values, to show up with good energy, to show up and be a light for other people, to show up and be a light for yourself. Like, I don't think it's as black and white as you either go into these spaces, work, community, whatever, and be whole and fuck what everybody else says, or you just get sucked up into the collective. Like, I think there's a middle space where you're attuned to what's in front of you and also attuned to yourself, and you're kind of like alchemizing the two of those spaces, right? So that you're being as authentic as possible without, of course, losing your job or ostracizing, whatever. So for the naysayers, figure it out. You're a grown up listening to this podcast. I'll be the bad cop. You can do this for real. We can we can um we can manage what's in front of us while we manage ourselves. Both are possible. That's
I
all.
think your word the word of alchemy, I think is such a specific and on point word to use, right? Because like we talk about these things as, this is our identity. We need to be authentic and we need to manifest a future. And then there's other people in the room who have identities who need to so
Mhm,
I think
mhm,
that is it, right? I mean, we talk a lot about being curious and having empathy. And I think if we're going to flip the script to say, like, how do you exist in community, corporate community or otherwise, um, dropping your ego, being curious, listening to what really matters to other people, being true to what really matters to you, and then making sure that that becomes the center point of the dialogue, not that just you're disagreeing with me. Because if you disagree with me and it really isn't a point that's all that meaningful, so the fuck what? Right? See, I
mhm.
didn't drop my curse, sadly. But I think that is it, right? It is about alchemizing the space with all of the people in it. And then, if we're thinking about ourselves again, it's alchemizing your own truth as well, right? All your lived
100%.
experiences based on the lived experiences you haven't yet lived. And how do you bring those two things together, right? So
So tell us what manifestation is not, because there's also a lot out there that kind of says, you know, your thoughts become reality, and it has us scared to think anything bad, anything negative. There's a whole school of thought that's like, if you're going through something terrible, you probably manifested it with your thoughts or something.
yeah, which
Like,
is
there's some, yeah, really
yeah.
harmful stuff out there. So can you speak to that for us?
Yeah, I think you just, nailed a big part of it, right? I think one of the biggest mysteries or the biggest misconceptions about manifestation
Mhm.
is it's, this passive wishing, right? The universe just has my back, right? If I put it out there, things will just happen, right? Like magic. There is no connection, right? Just outcomes will
Yeah.
just come out of nowhere. When I think about grounding manifestation, it's about choice, right? It's about energy. It's about the word that you use at the beginning, which is it's courage. It's about alignment. It's about attention, not just
Yes.
intention, but attention, right? Like what you pay attention to is what is going to allow the paths, right, to change your identity. And then by virtue of that, manifest ultimately what you're looking for. And again, sometimes it's not going to necessarily go exactly, to the script because I think the last thing I'd probably say around manifestation is it's about co-creation, right? It isn't just about it's about magic. That's how I think about it.
I want to read this from Mind Magic by
Oh,
James
nice.
Doty, because I think that it was helpful for me to hear in this way. So he does in the introduction talk a little bit about how manifestation dates back thousands of years, and kind of how there was a spiritual movement known as New Thought
Oh,
that
neat.
kind of combined, religious things and spiritual things and whatever, and it gave us law of attraction. And then, from there,
Yep.
it kind of gives us like the sort of modern interpretation of manifestation. But he says neuroplasticity is the umbrella term for the brain's ability to modify, change, and adapt both structure and function throughout life and in response to experience, as well as through repetition and intention, enabling the brain to form new circuits and to prune away old ones that no longer serve us. By redirecting our attention, we can literally change our brains, creating more gray matter in the very areas that help us learn, help us perform, and allow us to manifest. To manifest consciously, we must learn how to reclaim and direct the power of our attention and understand the physiological mechanisms that allow us to direct that attention, as well as the obstacles and false beliefs that limit our power to do so. What I love
I love that.
is that what's kind of like in here, but not in here, is growth mindset.
Yep.
You have to believe that you have the power to move beyond your circumstance, the cards you were dealt, whatever you sort of believe about yourself. We have the wiring. I'm sure not everyone. I'm sure that there are illnesses and things like that that prevent certain people from using the parts of the brain that maybe he's talking about. I don't know, and I want to be sensitive to that. But I think for many of us, like you said, a matter of attention and intention changes our literal brain. And
Does.
then that can create ripple effects across other areas of our life. And I love that. And I love that for us, but I also love that because every time I'm in front of a group of students who believe that how they're living is all there is, I can say with confidence that, like, this is not all there is,
Yeah.
right? Like, you can't even imagine how much more there is, but we can start that work through meditation, through movement, whatever. Like, it's just very exciting to sort of know that you have the tools already, that you don't need someone or something necessarily to come and save you, that there is work that you can begin to do on your own if you are conscious and aware that certain practices exist.
And it is about the practice. I would challenge everyone who listens to this to think about moments in your life, because I guarantee you there are more than one where things really manifested in a way that really felt right, that
Mhm.
really felt um, synchronous, right, that really felt impactful in a way uh, that maybe changed the trajectory of your life. Or those things happened. You maybe not didn't have the words for them, or the pattern, or the script, or the habit, and I think that's really what we're trying to talk about here. I think about I think about myself, and again, I'll put it back in a work context for a minute, because it is one of the more transformative parts of my life. I was a manager for a while. I'm going to use that term, not leader, right? I was a manager for a while. Um, and I would say that I was a relatively good manager. But I also, knew that I had ideas that I wanted to put in motion I'm like, yeah, but I'm not that type of leader. I'm not that person. I was a great second in command. And that's who I was. And there was an opportunity that rose that allowed me to take on an opportunity to effectively run a business that was about $90 million in size. And it had elements of the business that I had no business being part of, right? Marketing and sales and elements of my job that I had never done. And the opportunity arose and I went for it and I got it. And it was the most uncomfortable part of my professional career. But what happened next was the cool thing, because that allowed me to get on stage and to talk to news outlets. And lo and behold, right, just how I felt about myself and how my voice came out. Um, Wall Street Journal was calling me, right, for articles. Like, shit like that didn't happen. Um, it. And that really is what the domino was for me, right? Once I started to see myself in a different light, and I started to be on stage in a different light, more confident in my own voice, and on panels with other people, where we could have honest, authentic debates. It changed the whole trajectory of who I became
Mm,
as a leader. And it even influenced how I led my people because in some respect, right, I think I even held some of my people back, right? Because, you know, kind of my viewpoint became the
mhm,
ceiling that other people, or the container,
mhm.
right, that other people fit in. And once my ceiling went away, others kind of followed suit. So again, it's an interesting thing because if you can think about those times in your life and then deconstruct it or reverse engineer it, what you're probably going to see is the same thing we're talking about, right? That starts with awareness. Who am I? What's my identity? And then it goes to intention, which is like, what do I really want? What am I really looking for? And then it goes to alignment and habits and conditioning. And that's where vision boards and journaling and all this stuff starts to connect. And then that's what, gets the flywheel moving.
Yeah. That's thank you for sharing that because I don't think it's easy to admit when you hold other people back consciously or unconsciously. And I appreciate the fact that you would do it on this podcast. Yeah, I think that's brave in and of itself. Um, and that definitely resonates. And I will say for me, sometimes it doesn't take it doesn't take anything other than me being fed up with my own stuff. Right? Like there are so many different pathways that you can take. You can, like you just said, do a quick reflection and look back and then reverse engineer in order to go forward. You can use the power of journaling and vision boarding. Visualization is incredibly powerful. Athletes use it. Um, all kinds of, astronauts, race car drivers, right? Like they visualize the outcome that they're looking for because the body doesn't know whether or not you're really experiencing it or if
That's
you're just
exactly right.
imagining it, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you're like priming yourself to kind of like go in the direction you want to go, right? Um uh Journaling is incredible. It takes the thoughts from your head and it allows them to sort of not be so nebulous when you put things down on paper, specifically when you write. um it takes all of the chatter, like the monkey brain, and it dissolves that because there's only but so much that so when you're thinking, spinning, it can kind of be endless. But once you
Mm,
start to write stuff down,
mm,
it just comes out like once. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to write the same sentence 75 times. Maybe
yeah.
you might,
Yeah.
but in your head, you'll think the same negative thought loop 75 times, right? So putting it down on paper, putting your goals down on paper, having accountability partners, like all of these things are really helpful and useful. And I know for me, sometimes it's just a matter of I am so sick of being small.
Mm,
I am I am less concerned about failing, embarrassment, any of those things. Like I just can't live like this anymore. And sometimes it's that kick in the ass that's the catalyst to moving forward, right? It's not any other tool other than this like disalignment where I know without question that where I am is not where I'm supposed to be. And the only thing I can do is take one fucking step, right? Like
yeah.
sometimes it has to be a kick in the ass of self love to make it work.
Yeah, I love that. I think the difficulty that um, many people have, I certainly have had when we think about, you playing too small and stuff like that is for some people, I think the motivation is a comparative motivation, right? They see others and they're like, I want what that
Yes.
person wants, therefore I'm not playing
Yeah.
big enough. And that
Yes.
in and of itself potentially can motivate, right, some outcome. But when you know that you're capable of just something that you are not doing, when you strip away like the comparative piece, you just kind of live with your own self as the baseline. I think that really changes. When I think about like a Kobe Bryant as an example, you just, you know, listen to his philosophy and watch how he showed up. Um, of course, he wanted to win. There's a competitive nature to that, but he really didn't give a shit about what other people had, what other people's moves were, like what, like it was. He knew what was in him, right? And I
Mhm.
think we all
Mhm.
know what's in us. And I think
Yes.
going back to your point, you're so good at journaling, right? I wish I had that habit better than I do. But I think, the power of that is it allows you to really center on yourself. And, I think the only thing that that you really need to learn is truly, right? Journaling is the time where ego is not needed. And for me, I think probably the most difficult thing that I ever had to overcome when I journal is my internal comparative chatter is always there. As I'm putting pen to paper, right? I hear
Mm,
myself, right? Like counteracting it. When you can just strip that out, there's no one seeing, there's no one watching, right? There's no
yeah,
one to worry about. You have
right.
no fear. Just be true. And then once
Just be
those
true.
things start to hit the paper, that's when you really start to understand, like, how am I playing small? How am I limiting myself? Uh,
Yeah.
and that becomes the start of a lot.
And then once you sort of get that stuff out of the way, you can start thinking about redirecting that attention toward manifestation or toward whatever, direction that you're trying to go.
Yeah.
Because inevitably there there is something holding you back. So, right? So uncovering what that is important for moving forward, whether you do it journaling, walking in nature, breathing, whatever. It's just important that you reflect in order to then move and create, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely right. And the other thing I would just also say, you talked about this whole idea of visualization. Your mind doesn't know the difference. And I think if we're going to stay on the thread of what we're talking about, which is like complete and utter alignment and creating, patterns that your brain can link to, the more
Mhm.
specific you are, like when you're going
Yes.
through these ideas in your head, um, the more specific you are about, like, how are you feeling? What are you seeing? Like, what are things around you? And that's, I think, where a lot of the material things start to, come up, because it's impossible to not see yourself in spaces, um, whether it's out in, the open in the wilderness, or, in some beautiful house somewhere. Um, the more specific you can be, the more your brain starts to gray the line between reality, right?
Yes.
And that's what starts
Exactly.
the new patterns to go.
And I think you can also do that, um, while you're in moments as well. Um, I know for me, when I'm teaching, like, sometimes I have these moments where I just very quickly step outside of myself and I just take it in. Like, I just take in the room, I take in the moment, and I just try to, like, lock it into my mind of, like, "Yes,
Mhm.
this." Like,
Mhm.
"Thank
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
Thank you for," like, I
Yes.
am I get filled with gratitude and joy because this is it, and I wanna continue this, right? Like, so sometimes for me, it's like, it's not even this separate exercise, it's or it could also be it doesn't have to be even work related. Sometimes, just me, you, and Zion are hanging out and just having family time, and I lock it in and I'm like, yes, this. It brings me to tears sometimes because if you had asked me if I thought any of this would be true for my life, I would have said no, you
Which is
know?
crazy. Yes.
It's crazy, especially having a kid. Um, so sometimes the visualization is like an in the moment gratitude practice for me and like a mental image of the things that I wanna continue and that I hold really dear to my heart and soul.
I think the beautiful thing about that also is it does create these anchors in your brain. So it's some future state when you start to become dysregulated or uncertain or anxious about things, you have real moments that
Yes,
you centered
I'm
yourself.
pulling
You
from.
can right.
Yes,
And like
that's so
for me,
true.
I definitely have a lot of those, and I also have them, in the moments when I'm looking for some type of, inspiration. I think about the moments that
Mhm.
we were standing right among the giant redwoods, right, or in the middle
Yeah.
of Zion, or like in the middle of the ocean, right. There's just something about the energy, something about the awe
Mhm.
that creates a
Mhm.
sense of possibility in life. That sometimes you just need to snap yourself back and re-anchor.
Yeah.
So like this idea of when you're in the moments that just feel right, definitely pause and take it in, right? It will definitely help.
So true. So, so true. I hope this is like any amount helpful for people. I was reflecting on this and telling Mark, I think it's a little bit interesting that, we start the new year with such a fervor of action
Mm,
sometimes
mhm.
when the energy of nature is death and dark and retreat and
Yeah,
inward.
yeah,
And I think that that intention setting or manifestation for me is something that I'm going to be bringing to the end of this year and the beginning of the new year because I want to be intentional and I want to mm, give it thought while we are in this season of winter where it's quieter, where we're not as social, where we're literally like bundled up and inside more and even like winding down inside the home because it's dark, right? Like everything is different. And so using that energy to my advantage so that as things get lighter and we're outside more and the energy shifts, I'm ready for more action and I'm open to sort of whatever that looks like. Maybe it's
yeah.
busyness, maybe it's whatever, but just allowing myself to be in flow. And this kind of comes back to the idea of Todd Rose's work, which is like, I don't have to fucking, just because everybody else is doing whatever on January 1st, that might not be right for me in my
Right,
body.
right.
And so I need to be in integrity with myself and the energy that I know I need and right? Like I need to move forward in my own way and the only way that I could do that is to sort of like quiet down and listen and reflect on that and really reflect on like what do I want my year to look like?
Mm,
Not what weight do I want to be?
mm,
Not,
mm.
whatever, but like what do I want my year to look like? How do I want my year to feel? And
I,
then how do I get to that?
I think that that second adder is key, and then I'll add one. Right.
Yeah.
I think it does start with what are we looking for? What do we want our year to look like? How do we want it to feel? But
Mhm.
like, why do we want our year to look the way? Right. Because
Ooh,
that's the
come
real
on.
thing. Right.
Come on.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the unlock to
Yeah.
me. Because I
That's
think way
really
too many people
important.
going to your point, people will talk about, I want my year to look like, whatever. I want to be able to travel X number of times. I want to lose 20 pounds of weight. They now ask why. Like what's the why behind
Yeah.
travel? Is it an escape or
Right.
is it discovery? Different things, right? You
Right.
want to lose the weight
Right.
because of aesthetics or because you want to live a healthier and longer life. Different
Right.
things. And
right.
both can be true and both have
Well, it can be
answers,
true.
right?
Yeah.
But
There's no
know the
judgment,
answer. Like, know
but
why you're
no.
chasing what you're is it because when I post my Instagram pics, it's gonna show up better than, some of the
Yeah.
other people that are posting, or is it gonna allow me to feel better about the life I'm living?
Yeah. That's really important to pull that in. Thank you.
You know,
I feel that this was a beautiful conversation. We have some reflection, but I'm wondering if that deserves a separate space.
probably.
Like some maybe I'll just release it as a second audio.
I think that would be brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
just I'll just do that. Stay tuned. It has like a little part
Cliff
2. But
cliffhanger.
there
Yeah.
there are I'll say this. We have some questions that you can journal or that you can just use for quiet reflection.
Yep.
And Mark and I were like a little concerned with like if people are driving as they listen to this or doing something where they can't sort of sit and take a
Yeah,
moment,
do the
then
work.
it's not fair to you. So in the spirit of that, I'll just tack on a little part
I
2
love
so
that.
that
I love
if
that.
you were interested, we will give you the space to just be with some of these questions and yeah, hopefully it's helpful. So, I guess with that, Mark, do you have anything else that you want to add? Anything that was unsaid or anything like that?
And maybe this is just more, I found it a cool thing where, if people are just looking for maybe one other element, they would find it cool as well. It definitely is not different. It's just an and. But
Mhm.
all of this, when we think about living with intention, in alignment, in integrity to who you are, your energy shows up different. We would also say it raises the vibration, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
There was a study done, and actually they used it based on muscles. What is it that starts with a kinesiology?
Kinesthetics?
Kinesthetics, right?
Kinesiology? Okay.
So they ran this study on muscles, and they plotted it on this graph where they looked at emotions, right? So the reaction of the muscles, the vibration, we'll just call it the energy, right? When you're feeling shame or hate or anything like that, the actual energy is at a different level than if you're feeling hope and peace, right? They're on different levels. The most interesting thing is if you look at the plot and where the vibrations go from where we call low to high, the break point is courage, right? Uh, That is the break point from low vibration to high vibration. So if we want to bring this
Wow!
all the way back, um,
Wow!
right?
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
that
You
would be.
never shared that with me. I'm learning it in real time.
See, see. So
That's
I thought that
very
was really,
cool.
really, really cool. So I'll leave with
Yeah.
that.
Damn. I feel like we have to do a whole episode on that. Oh crap. All right, you got to send me that study. I need to I need to know more. All right, everyone. I hope you stayed with it till the end. I hope it was of value to you. You can definitely tell us. Send a DM. Let us know what you think, how
Definitely.
you manifest, how you perhaps you don't think about it as manifestation. Perhaps you think about it as goal setting or in a different way. But we are just always open to hearing how it lands with you. If you love this podcast, please consider giving it 5 stars on Apple. I don't know how things are rated on Spotify, but
I don't know
probably
either,
5 stars,
actually.
whatever. Yeah, it's stars, right?
It's got to be,
Give
right?
us the highest, whatever the highest honors are, we'll take them on all platforms. A lovely review would be nice as well. It helps other people find this podcast. It furthers our work. Um, we don't make a single dollar off of this podcast. That's never necessarily been the goal. We just wanted to be together and talk about interesting things, hard things, and sometimes do that with very special guests. So, if you love it, help other people find it so that they can love it too. And thank you so much for listening, for being here.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.